Hello everybody, my name is April Johnson and the purpose of this video is to discuss child abuse and neglect and the similarities and differences in social work practice in both rural and urban communities. There are many areas of social work practice that have significant differences and comparable attributes among rural and urban areas. The objective of this video is to outline child abuse and neglect and pretty much just explain the slides that I have created in my presentation. First, there is a notion that child abuse is less likely to happen in rural areas, which is not necessarily true because child abuse prevalence is both common in rural and urban areas. As a matter of fact, it is more common in rural areas. Let's see. And I'm going to also talk to you all about the exact definition of child abuse and neglect. Some of the basic things like food, clothing, healthcare, housing. Those are some of the things that children definitely have to have. Some of the basic necessities, and if they're not provided with those necessities, then they are at risk for being abused or neglected. So, okay, I will talk about the 4 types of child abuse in this presentation, which are physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. And okay, and we'll talk about the risk factors that attribute to child abuse in both rural and urban areas, such as low income family stressors that contribute to child abuse as well. And there's a very popular policy called the CAPTA Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act that is focused on preventing child abuse, and it has funds allocated to make sure that social workers in both rural and urban areas have access to resources to prevent child abuse. I've also added some graphs to my PowerPoint slide that kind of gives you a numerical figure on how often child abuse happens in both rural and urban areas and what kind of child abuse and neglect takes place. I've talked about some rural disadvantages, some disadvantages of living in rural areas, having limited access to child care facilities and transportation issues, and the lack of abuse being reported to agencies. I've gave some ideas also in my presentation of how we can enhance the areas for child abuse and neglect in social work practice in both areas. I've also added some extra contributors in child abuse and what causes child abuse in both rural and urban areas. Oh, and then I have another graph on here that actually gives a breakdown of each different type of child abuse and the numbers as they relate to rural and urban areas. And you can see in this particular chart how rural areas are they're more at risk, or they have higher numbers than people in urban areas. Okay. And and I discussed the findings of the chart that I added onto the presentation. Let's see. Then I posed a few questions to ask yourself about why we don't have as much access in rural areas for social work for child abuse among any other services, why there is a lack of, and do we have a lot of social workers who are interested in working in rural areas? There is a section that I added about what social workers can do. I actually found a source, and about what social workers can do to help with this issue in rural areas. And I talked about some child abuse prevention programs that are available for social workers. That's pretty much the gist of my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. Please feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you.